This morning, I ended up sending off 4 query letters for my novel. So now the wrestling novel now has been sent off to 4 agents, and we now will await to hear what happens. I've spoken before about doing a slow rollout of this process, so maybe a month from now I send off maybe 4 more, I'm not sure, but we've done at least the initial part of it. When I had started this process out, and not the novel, but the actual act of becoming a writer, when I had, I think 8 years ago, something like that, when I had first started and said I was going to be a serious writer, when I had said I'm going to take this seriously and make this, potentially a viable career at some point in my life, there was a fear of failure. There was a large fear that this was never going to work out. At this point now, it still exists. There are still the days that I worry that this thing is not going to turn into anything. Days when where I have potentially the regret that, you squandered, so much time on this projects, on these novels, and they never seem to turn into anything, right? The fear still exists. But what's happened recently is I've started to see the other side of that. I've started to see what failure might look like what actual failure would appear to be. Yes, certainly there's the loss of time, right? You're never getting that back. You're not getting the time you sunk into projects back. And yes, there is the economic side of it, right? You make certain economic sacrifices, you make certain lifestyle sacrifices to do this. I'd taken 6 months unpaid off at the beginning of the year because I believed in my skill that much, because I believed enough that 6 months of pure writing would improve my writing skill over the rest of my life, that it would get me to a higher point that I considered a calculated risk. I said, it's worth sacrificing 6 months of income that for the next decades and decades and decades of my life, hopefully it's that long, that my skill as a writer will now be at a higher level going forward now, that I will be better at this. So maybe in a decade from now, it pays off. Perhaps 1 decade from now, I finally get that really good, strong breakout book that changes everything. And yeah, it costs in the short term the 6 months of no income. But on the other side of that, you end up making all of that money you would have made at that time and more. But maybe it doesn't work out. Perhaps it doesn't. And what's helped me out a lot in sort of understanding this sort of fear of failure, this sort of fear that this is not going to work out, is I've seen what it looks like to have hit a certain rock bottom. I won't go into too much of my day job here, but with certain clients that I work with through the program I do, it's community-based. So my clients that I train in my job are not these sort of high-end clients. They are people that are on very low incomes. They are people that are on generally some sort of government assistance, what have you. And as you start training them, as you start working with them through, the exercise programs that I run with them, they share a little bit, right? They'll share a little bit of their life. There have been times I've trained people in their homes and in their locations. And when I say homes, these are basically quote unquote projects, right? Towers, low income apartments. And they tell me their stories, and I've seen what it's like to have hit what most people would be considered a rock bottom. I've seen what it's like to see people that are living in apartments that are basically smaller than my living room. And there's a resilience in their attitude. There is a resilience in these people's attitude. There is an element of, I'm in a low place, but I'm working up. I can eventually work out of this. There is an element of finding in that sort of low point a chance to rebuild yourself, that yes, they've hit this sort of low spot. And if I was to ever get there, if I was to, lose all my money, if I was to end up completely broke, could I live out of, could I be in that situation? Could I go to that small apartment? Could I live in that small place? Could I crash on people's couches? Could I do that and still survive and still be alive and still be able to get up every day and return to the keyboard or do what it takes to get a day job to sort of get myself out of it? And the answer has always been yes. I have seen these situations and I've asked myself, if I get here, can I get out of it? Can I work my way back out of it? And yes, I can. And that's helped a lot. That's helped a lot to sort of assuage a lot of these negativity, a lot of the sort of self-doubting thoughts that I get. That tends to go away. It's gone away more and more frequently because of that, because of my experiences with seeing that, with seeing these low points. So as I go forward with this, as I sort of move for the writing process, as I get ready for my next project, there's a certain armor, there's a certain mental sort of power in being able to have seen the worst, accept that it could happen to me, accept that I could make that a viable thing, that I could accept that sort of life, at least in the short term. And now I can go on to the next project with confidence, without that sort of worry. Yes, the fear, I think, still is there. I think this fear will never actually go away, no matter how much you accept that failure could happen and what failure means and what it actually looks like. As much as you accept that, I still believe that the fear will always be there. There's always going to be that nagging fear. That's a good thing. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps you pushing. It keeps you moving forward. And so, for those that maybe are thinking about this, those that are going through a similar project, that are kind of worried about the failures, I encourage you to look at what it's going to look like, to look at what it actually looks like to have failed, what that actually means, to actually define failure for yourself and define what it looks like when you have failed. Is it economically? Is it again, like for me, right, that small apartment, and living in kind of a lifestyle that perhaps is not as economically strong as what you're used to now. Is that what it is? Is failure for you looking back on your life 10 years from now and thinking, wow, I wasted 10 years on this thing, it didn't work out, oh my God, the things I could have done? Is that what failure is for you? Is failure for you looking back on your life and wondering what could have been, right? Is it, because for me that's the grand failure, right? That for me has always been the grand failure. It's the regret of not doing it. That to me has always been why I've gone after this. That's why at the age of, I was 23, 24, I had committed myself to this, because I had enough self-awareness, I think, back then to realize if I hadn't gone down this avenue, if I hadn't started taking this seriously, if I'd taken the more accepted path, I would have regretted it. That I'd be where I am now, and I'd be miserable. I would be miserable. I would be going through life very, very empty. And even now, I can't look at that. I can't imagine what that would have looked like. No matter what situation, I could have ended up in. That to me has always been the worst. That to me has always been the scarier element. Is not going after what I wanted. So, if you yourself are going through that, worrying, define it. Define what failure is. See it. Mentally see it. Mentally accept it almost. Get used to it. Get used to what it looks like. Get used to what it feels like. In your mind's eye, witness what failure is. Embrace it and ask yourself, could I accept this? Could I get in this situation, and could I work my way back out of it if I ever got to this point? And if you can, then you've overcome, I think, the fear of failure as much as you possibly could.